मक्खर बम्बे भू 80-90 पूरे 100 में लगा धागा बबलू निकल कर भागा बबलू 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 भाग गया है देखो बबलू जैसे बबलू खेल रहा हो अक्कड़ बक्कड़ बम्बे भू 80-90 पूरे 100 में लगा धागा बबलू निकल कर भागा
the farmers that are protesting. They have been there for about 60 days now. The farmers have been protesting. Today is the big day when India's Republic Day happens on 26 January, but the farmers decided to carry out a rally and come to the center of of India, the capital, New Delhi. They're taking out a tractor rally. The idea is to jam the whole outer ring road with tractors to make their voice being heard. Now, a lot of these farmers, you have to remember, are coming from Punjab and some from Haryana and some from UP. But most of the farmers are from Punjab. One of the reasons a lot of the farmers have come from Punjab is because they have been part of this whole green economy. Punjab is what brought India the green revolution. It is where it became the breadbasket of India. And that is where a lot of farmers are coming from, saying that we've been used to establishing our businesses around these ideas of the minimum support price, the logic around electricity bill, special electricity prices for the farmers, and obviously, the wholesale markets that were established, which are called APMCs. But again, the government of India may have great intentions, as they say, but the communication has been poor. And one of the reasons the communication has been poor is because the farmers don't understand what's really happened here and why they are supposed to, go in line and become part of this whole, this new three acts. Let's be very, very clear on what's really happening here on the ground here. Let's take up the images. Let's take up the audio here a bit to show you what's happening on the ground. All right. Joining me now on the broadcast is Mr. Dikshit, Ambuj Dikshit. He's a lawyer of the Supreme Court of India, and he's going to tell us a bit about what's really happening in this protest. Why are the farmers protesting? Please bring Mr. Dikshit on.
Hello. Yeah. Hi.
Mr. Dikshit, tell me from your perspective, how has this government failed to communicate what their intentions were?
See, it all starts from the basic fact that no one demanded these laws. Okay, and am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So the basic fact is that no one demanded these laws. These laws were brought in not following the parliamentary procedure while the country faces an ongoing pandemic, and while the numbers of coronavirus cases every day were, and so obviously there was a suspicion. These laws are suspect from that perspective. Firstly, secondly, obviously Punjab is the main state from where all the government procurement happens. That is where most of procurement is done by the government. They are the maximum hit by these laws, and they have been asking for all of these laws. However, the government is not listening to them. The government is trying to just tire the farmers. They want to tire them so that the farmers leave the protest, but that doesn't seem to be happening as of now. Today, the protests also have turned a bit violent in some parts of Delhi. There was a lot of tear gas shelling and other things as well. So there definitely has been a communication gap between the farmers and the government. And I think the government will have to listen to the demands of these farmers. And Supreme Court has formed a committee. The committee has
Mr.
not been
Dixit,
accepted.
Mr.
Yes.
Dixit, you've talked about the violence on the ground. Let me show you a little video in terms of what's been happening on the ground. Please bring up full frame. Show us a bit of more video on what was happening on the ground. So, when a lot of the farmers approached the Delhi border, now the agreement with the Delhi government and with the police was that there will be no entry to Delhi before the parade ends today on the 26th January. But obviously, the farmers started coming in yesterday itself. They were going through barriers, and that is where a lot of the challenge came. They came ready to go through these barriers. They pushed these barriers across and they went in. Now, Delhi police obviously opened, and tear gassed them and started hitting them. And there was a lot of beating with lathis. These are long sticks made of bamboo and obviously injured, but we have to remember these farmers were ready. These farmers aren't the weak farmers that have been suppressed. So the ideal situation would have been if these farmers came in, they were only willing to go through a regular protest through Delhi. You should have let them come in through and walk properly, let them make the protest, because the Delhi government, the government of India is in no mood to really relent. It has talked about backtracking for a few months, but they made it very clear that they're not going to repeal these farm laws. And that's something that's been very, very clear. Now, Ambuj, when we look at the challenge around the government of India when it talks about these farm laws, and there is pretty much you are associated with the Congress party, is that correct?
Yes, sir. I'm a spokesperson of the Delhi Youth Congress.
Perfect. So tell me from your perspective, are these laws that the government of India proposing not good for the farmers? Explain to me what the Congress's perspective is and what your perspective is.
No, obviously, they're not good for farmers. We have made it very clear since the very beginning, and that we have extended our support, full-fledged support to the farmers. The laws, see, it's not just about farmers; it's also about consumers of India. I know people who are into the sector of agriculture, farming, and the main point is the repeal, the amendment of the Essential Commodities Act. By amending the Essential Commodities Act in the way that they have, now today any big corporate can try and stock as much food grain as they want to, and they can, game with the prices, game with the market. They can manipulate the market in any way they want to, and there will be no action against them. That's one major issue. And obviously, there are issues on contract farming and, trying to make the APMCs, that is Agriculture Produce Marketing Committees, spineless and toothless. And they are saying that, Aratiyas are the commission agents and all these people are men and all these things. But we don't think so. We think it is important to regulate the agricultural market. Everywhere in the world, agricultural market is regulated in some sense or the other. Even in places like UK and United States of America, the agricultural market is not an open market. And that
Why
is something
shouldn't
that
it be an open market? Mr. Dixit, this is one thing I don't understand, and I'm going to question it. I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. Now, the farmer, what the government is saying, will be allowed to sell free of, of any encumbrances where they want to sell, who they want to sell it to. If they want to go and sell it to the APMC market, they can go and sell it to the APMC market. Now, from my perspective, that is not a bad thing. But explain to me from your perspective, why is it a bad thing?
APMCs and they were also, I'll just give you some context here. There was also a lot of talk about Congress promising exactly the same thing in their 2019 manifesto and things like that. Actually, we also don't think that APMCs are altogether a solution. But what we need to do is we need to make smaller APMCs for a smaller cluster of villages. Let's say today, around 2,000 villages in Uttar Pradesh will have just one APMC to sell their grains to. This is something that we need to regulate. We need to bring in smaller agriculture committees in smaller number of villages. Let's say every 3 or 4 villages, we have one APMC. Now the problem with private participation, the open market, is that we have tried. India tried it in 2006 in Bihar, and it failed. We have seen that the state of Bihar farming has actually become worse after the 2006 laws. And so, obviously, and after the government says that it doesn't, if it introduces private players and you can sell to private players, the problem that happens is that government will stop public procurement. The government is anyway not procuring from most of the states. It's only procuring from some parts of Western UP, from Punjab and Haryana. In that, and that is a problem because then everybody will have to depend upon cash crops, and the situation might not be very poor cash crops, or there are a lot of other things that are involved when the private player uses that. So might not
Uh,
think,
you
but
know,
it is
so from my
important
perspective,
to
Mr.
regulate them.
Dixit, from my perspective, the government of India has a strategy, and I'll kind of explain the strategy and how I understand it. The government of India looks at the farmers of India and says there is whole lot of money that goes into subsidies and challenges around giving money to these farmers. They want to stem that outflow of money in some ways, and then they want to figure out a way on how they will keep the laissez-faire. That means the free market flowing, which means markets come in, people come in to buy the grains. It will impact, obviously, the cost of the end produce in the market. Anyways, there are a lot of people who've talked about how food is very, very cheap, and it possibly shouldn't be this cheap because it takes a lot of effort and money to do farming. It takes a lot of money and effort to actually bring food to the market, and it's too cheap. And that's one of the reasons that the government is saying, all right, let's go for completely a free marketplace, and then the market will settle on itself. The idea of laissez-faire, as the French put it in the 1800s, the idea of a free market. And I think they want to take the farmers that journey. But the farmers possibly aren't ready. A better way would have been a better transition forward, a transition that would have seen over the years to change the system. You can't just shut down systems in one day and say, all right, there are these three new farm laws. A slower change would have been easier, but obviously the communication on the government of India end has been very, very poor. They have not been able to bring the farmers to the table. They've not been able to properly sit down with them and have a discussion. They obviously had a very, very bad strategy when it comes to communication. Neither has the strategy been good with the other laws in the past. So this is not new. Mr. Dixit, now, if you were, to look at this objectively, what would you see as a good change forward? Is there a transitional way of getting past this impasse?
See, so I'll just give you an example. I'm also a legislative draftsman. I advise a lot of government entities in for their various rules and laws that they are to pass. And you'll not believe, for every provision that we make, every single provision, every single amendment that we envisage, we hold at least 7 to 8 stakeholder meetings. We talk to people before we bring in the laws. See, this impasse is because the government has not talked to the people. The government has to understand that the demand of the agricultural market in Punjab might be different from what the farmer in Maharashtra needs. So that's important. That's why the government needs to repeal the law. See, government has come up with a proposal that they'll keep the laws in abeyance, and there is no provision to keep in abeyance. When we live in a parliamentary form of democracy, we don't live in a presidential form of democracy. When the parliament has passed the law, government has no power to stop those laws from coming into effect. Either the laws come into effect or the government repeals them. There is no provision in the constitution which allows the government to keep the laws in abeyance. So the best way forward would be to keep, and this is not a political issue. You talk to the stakeholders, that is, you talk to the farmers, you repeal the laws, sit with the farmers, talk to what is the reform that they need. and then I think everyone will be happy.
And I think, Mr. Dikshit, I agree with you on this completely. Is that communication from the government of India was very, very poor. The government was not able to, bring the farmers to the table, have a discussion with them, even if it was just the Punjab and the Haryana and the Western UP farmers. These are stakeholders for you. And they're not in the tens of thousands; they're in the millions. If you can't
Exactly.
sit down and discuss with them properly, then you as a government are not doing your job. You're not there for being a dictatorship. You're there for communication. You're a democracy. And that's the strength of a democracy. Let's go and see some of the video that's coming in from the borders now, where the farmers have now marched in and they are marching towards the ring road of Delhi, where they're going to continue doing the protest. We also have a reporter on the ground, Jessica Taneja. She's going to bring us the latest in terms of what's happening on the ground. So let's go take a look at some of the video, and let me come back to you, Mr. Dikshit. So literally, tractors have come in from across the country. People have driven hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, men, women. Guys, continue rolling the video. Let's keep taking a look at the video, because it's certainly when you begin realizing how far these poor young farmers have traveled and what they're bringing to the table. A lot of the people have been maligning the farmers, saying that these are rich farmers, they're eating pizzas and they're eating cheese and burgers. But if you really look at an average farmer who is walking in here on these tractors, these are regular farmers. These are not some richy rich farmers. But you must remember that the Punjab farmer is a progressive farmer. He's not a backward farmer. They work very hard. They work hard and they deliver. They produce food. They work hard on their farms, produce milk, produce vegetables. So they aren't some poor lot. And why should farmers be considered poor? And why should we be happy seeing a poor, famished farmer? We should be happy seeing a farmer who has decent money, who can send their kids to school, who can drive in decent cars, who can go on vacation. There is no reason to be proud of poor farmers. So certainly when we look at this material here, you will realize that these farmers are ready, these farmers are working hard, and these farmers are willing to take the fight to the next platform. They aren't willing to back down. They've been sitting there for 60 days, and they're saying until the farm laws are repealed, they will continue staying there. And this is what we should be proud of as a nation. The people of India should be proud of who these farmers are and what they can deliver. They are making their voice heard. They've been sitting peacefully protesting the farm laws. And I think there is no harm in doing that. That is what a democracy is for. When you want to stand up against an idea and say, this is not what works for me, then you stand up and you fight for it. You're not going to take it lie down. If that's not a democracy, then what is? And that's why the democracy was established. It's for the people, it's by the people, and it's for the people. And that's the whole idea of it. So the people are showing that they will stand and they will protest. These farmers have very, very wide scale support, not just from India, but from all their brethren across the world. And I think that's one of the other reasons many protests have been held in many parts of the world, whether it was New York, whether it was Vancouver, whether it was Toronto, whether it was LA. Farmers, or in the UK, they were farmers, families were out there protesting, saying that these farm laws are not aligned with what their thought process is today, and they're not aligned with how their economies are set up. So I think possibly a great place would be to start and have a discussion with them and see where it's going. Mr. Dikshit, now there has been massive support for these farmers from across the world. How do you look at that support?
See, that's exactly the point we have been trying to make for several days now, for several months. As I told you in the beginning, uh, no agricultural market in an open market. It can't be. The nature of the market is such that it can't be an open market in the literal sense, and that's why there has been a lot of support from USA, Canada, Australia, even New Zealand for that matter, and several other countries, several parts of the world, because people understand that the farmers, the Indian farmers today are fighting for their rights. See, when injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty, and that's something important to remember. These farmers are not fighting for something that is not right. They are fighting for their rights. They are fighting for what they should have a say in. They're fighting for what is the price that they should get for their crops. They're fighting for who should they sell their crops to. So obviously there has been a lot of support, and I think in the coming days as well there will be a lot of support too. But even in India, there has been a massive support for these farmers from all across the country, all states. There have been states in their legislative assemblies supporting the farmers' agitation. People like Captain Amrinder Singh and all have been very vocal about the farmers' laws. So I think yes, it's a good sign that the government will have to backtrack. The government will have to go back on its decisions of implementing these laws, and they will have to repeal these dumping days. And otherwise, I don't think the farmers are going to back down.
Mr. Dikshit, I think you made your point very, very clearly. I think uh, obviously the Congress party has, pushed back on the way the laws have been brought in. But the government of India certainly is not willing to relent. Obviously, they've held their ground. They feel they're doing this in the best interest of the farmers. But obviously, the farmers don't feel that it's being done in the best interest of their existence. So they're marching on, and they're saying this pushback for 18 months is not going to work. They will want a full repeal of these laws, and the repeal is possible. It's a longer process, and we all understand how laws are made and how they're repealed. But in this case, you have to remember that these farm laws didn't even come to the parliament for discussion on the table.
Exactly.
And there was no reason in a democracy not to bring laws to the table, to the floor of the House for a proper discussion, to a proper understanding for the rest of the people. You may have as many seats in parliament. You may have, forget 300 something, you may have 500 seats, but it doesn't matter. For the other 45 representative politicians who represent other political parties, they should be able to weigh in, they should be able to give their perspective. That's what a democracy is about. The democracy is not about you pushing laws through and saying, here is the law, this is how I see it. It's about making sure a discussion happens. It's making sure you make the population of the country understand why this law is essential and why they want it and what will the impact be financially on the country. That is what you explain. All right, this is what we are doing. The amount of money we spend on farmer subsidies is this much, and because of this impact, we are going to offset some of the cost. Explain that. You don't need to keep it in some little drawer of yours. It is not your private drawer. This is the nation. And when you are a democratic country, you explain to the population the actions you make. We don't want you, and nobody wants any country to take these actions in small hidden rooms. That's not what democracies are about. Democracies are about open discussion, consultations, and making sure that you deliver what you're expected to deliver as a democracy. If you don't want a democracy, that's another story. But if you want a democracy, then you will follow the ethos and the ways a democracy exists. Mr. Dikshit, thank you for joining me for this show. We're going to go now and see a little more video, and our correspondent Jessica Taneja is joining us live. She is near the Singhu border, so she will be coming up shortly. And thank you for joining me for this show.
Thank you, sir.
So now we're going to see a little more video as it comes in, and if our correspondent Jessica is live, I'm going to bring her in. Show me a little video in terms of what's happening at the borders. So if you see, there are massive amount of protests happening, and this is not just this border. This is the border that we see, Singhu border, which is, from one side of Punjab, from Haryana. Then there is another border which is also shut down. Then you go on the UP side, Uttar Pradesh side. Then there is a border on the Rajasthan side where farmers are protesting as well. Even in Noida, there is a bunch of farmers sitting there on protest. So literally, Delhi has been encircled by these farmers. It's shameful, to say the least, that protests like these are happening across the state, across the city, and these are farmers that are going to come in. But we have to remember that there have been massive protests in the past as well, which have taken place in India. When the Congress government was in place, there were massive protests as well by the farmers. Now, joining me is Jessica Taneja. She's live. She was at the Singhu border. Tell me, Jessica, what did you see on the ground, and how hard is the resolve of the farmers?
Well, Rohit, I saw farmers today who said they've come with families and they've come with a lot of food supply and other supplies could help them stage protests for another 1 year, they told me. So they're resilient. They say they're not going to accept anything else.
I'm sorry, Jessica. Jessica, your audio is breaking. Please find a better location to do this. I don't know if, why your audio is breaking, but your audio is breaking. So the idea is that we at Democracy News Live are here to represent and tell you about what's happening on the ground and how we look at this as a perspective. It needs to be a balanced perspective. It's not going to be an imbalanced perspective. That's not what journalism is about. We're going to explain different sides of it. We've even asked the government of India to kind of explain their situation. There has been nobody who's given us a response, but our conversations with them over a period of time. All right, thanks for watching Democracy News Live. We will bring this broadcast to an end, but the Indian farmer protest is going to continue. This is the 26th of January 2021 and India's Republic Day, and Indian farmers are out in New Delhi protesting on what they need and what they want from the government of India. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.